Hi everybody, Chris here from Truly Holistic. This is part 2 in regards to looking through the plethora of illnesses and issues that humanity goes through and how they're all produced through our inability to provide our natural state, a state of being. And of course, when we present our natural state of being, how we can remedy these issues. So part 1, we went through a lot of the cardiovascular disease, heart disease stuff, and also diabetes. Now, in this one, we're going to talk about some of the cognitive decline issues, cancer and mental health. So it's going to be really exciting, this one. And again, we're going to showcase the sacred geometry behind me. So let's get started in regards to cognitive decline, which we could put in that bracket, Alzheimer's and dementia. Now, the way that we look at Alzheimer's and dementia is this is a byproduct of not presenting our natural state, right? As the human, we are conditioned to use as our primary discernment mode, mind, thought, mentality. And of course, then our heart is not being used, right? And as we said in part 1, that the old expression, right? If you don't use it, you lose it. And if we're not using the heart and the capacity and the infinite potential possibility it presents, not just as an organ, but going further than that, right? Is that it's a wormhole that facilitates our consciousness, our soul consciousness. So if we're not utilizing that, we're up here, we're not presenting our natural state, right? When we're in our heart, we're presenting our natural state. So after years and years and decades, because generally Alzheimer's, for the most part, and dementia are, mid to later parts of life, right? And so the whole reason why we're here is to create and forge reality that we then experience, right? And what is then presented in our experience is kind of a guide to forge us forward, right? As long as we're connected to simply what is, right? Which is to be rooted, grounded in that now, right? To simply see our experience as what is, right? Like it's a virgin experience, a new experience, right? We're not comparing it, or we're not trying to connect it to a past experience. We're just seeing it as it is. And when we do that, then our natural state is to be present, right? When we drop on our heart, and what the heart wants us to be is self-aware of the now. It couldn't care about 5 minutes in the past, couldn't care less about 5 minutes in the future. It wants you to be fully self-aware in the moment, right? To be connected to simply what is. And why that is because then we can learn the lesson of the experience. And when we learn that experience, we convert that experience into wisdom, which means we don't hold on to the experience. We don't hold on to anything, right? And we're going to connect to, this aspect that all illness is due to a congestion, obstruction, or blockage of flow, which means that we then provide a state to the body that it starts to accumulate and hold on to things, right? Not to let them go, but to hold on to things. Now, there's an expression in regards to when we get to the origin and connect to why we're having the experience, right? A lesson, and that is to get to the heart of the matter. Funny that, right? It's using the word heart because we need the heart to become self-aware or aware there is a lesson, and secondly, to decipher that lesson, right? To learn from it. Now, when we're not in our heart, our natural state, and we're up here and doing it from mind, thought, mentality, then we tend to simply not stay with what is, right? We allow mentality to take part, right? Which means that we use our past experience to influence how we perceive and how we respond and react to what is presented to us in the now, which means that we don't see it as simply what is, we see it as something different based on our past experience, right? And within that past, that could be traumas, that could be health problems and so on as part of that past. So, we get into trouble, we get into problems, right? In regards to that. And so therefore our experiences never get converted into wisdom, which means we accumulate experience. Okay, and my soul consciousness in sessions refers to the body as a computer, right? And whether you want to see it as a biological computer, just a computer. And of course, with a computer, right, there's only so much hard drive space on that computer, right? And as we build up experience, we're taking up more and more space on that hard drive. And eventually you'll run out of space. Now, this is what we see Alzheimer's and dementia as, right? This is why often, they can recall things way back, but nothing presently, because again, they've run out of disk space, they run out of hard drive space on that computer. And also, so what's happening with the body? It's in congestion, it's in accumulation. And when we look at the body, right, when things start to build up in the body and accumulate, that's a definition of toxicity. So you can see how that then associates with illness. And of course, what is needed to purge all of that out, right, to kind of reboot the hard drive to create space is flow. And flow comes from when we get our heart open. That's a primary source of flow, right? What we talked about quite a lot in part 1. Now, so in regards to, let's have a look at this. So we've touched upon Alzheimer's, we've touched upon dementia, cognitive decline, right? Which is really a byproduct of using a discernment mode of how we perceive and process reality that never supported us, right? And I feel like before we get into cancer, we're just going to jump from Alzheimer's, dementia, to mental health, because I think, we've touched upon mind, thought, mentality. Now, of course, this is an umbrella in itself, mental illness, right? There's so many of these problems that are under that umbrella, such as depression, anxiety, ADHD, schizophrenia, psychosis, and bipolar, all these sorts of things, right? But the word mental is very important here, right? Because mental is there because of someone using mentality, right? And as I said, when we use our heart, right, when we feel into our situation, we stay present with simply what is. We don't use mentality. Mentality is not a part of our natural process, our natural way of discerning and processing reality. Mentality is a byproduct of using the mind. Okay, so, and as I just mentioned before, right, the whole idea of what mentality is. Mentality creates a remanifestating loop or cycle that we get confined and limited to, because mentality is not connecting with simply what is. And what I like to say to my clients, if we're not connecting to simply what is, we're not keeping it real, because that's real. Because really, if we want to look at that in the way of linear time, again, the way that we're conditioned to see time, past, present, future, which really, that's not real, it's an illusion, right? We came up with this whole idea of measuring moments, which is time. So it's a human construct that now generally humanity's become a slave to, right? We're always looking at the time, we've got to be here at a certain time and all these sorts of things, right? We've never got enough time, right? So life's about running against time. So this linear aspect of time is really an illusion, because really, the only choice we have is the choice now, right? I'm going to emphasize the word now, right? Present. That's the only choice you have. And you have another choice, which is the now, and the next choice, the now, and the now. Whenever I say, hey, I did that amazing thing 10 years ago. No, I didn't. I didn't do it 10 years ago. I did it in the now. It's just that from this point, we use that aspect of linear time. We perceive it like that. We use it as a measurement to say, hey, it was done in a moment before this one, right? And when we give it a number and so on, right? 10 years. Okay, so what mentality does, it uses that illusion of time, because when we see it everywhere. Like I'm subscribed to YouTube channels where they talk about, critics talking about new movies coming out and new music coming out. And I see it more than ever now that people are like just dissing on music today, dissing on movies today and night. And the reason why they are is because they're always comparing it to something before it, which is using mentality, right? And we can't appreciate what comes in the now by always comparing it to something that's happened before. This is mentality, right? So mentality can rob you from a lot of joy and a lot of happiness and so on, but mentality is very bound and connected to mental illness, right? Because mental illness, right, mental health problems, for me, is evidence-based research to tell us the way that we're being taught and conditioned to perceive and process and respond to our life is flawed. It doesn't support us because we're using mentality. We're using mind-thought mentality, which doesn't support us because it's not you. That's not your natural state, right? To get the heart open and allow the heart, your soul, to lead you, right? So, as I say, mentality is always bringing the past into play. The past influences your now, which then forges your next experience, which you could say is your so-called future, which creates a loop because you're just creating more of the past as your future. Okay, which means you feel like you're moving, but you're not. You're stuck in the same place, a bit like running on a treadmill, right? You feel like I'm experienced, I'm running, I'm getting somewhere, but you're still in the same spot. Okay, and this whole confinement and limitation, because you as a soul came here originally to expand your awareness, to expand your wisdom, to expand yourself as a consciousness, not to limit. Okay, and this is what we've been conditioned when we use mind-thought mentality, not our natural state, that's limiting us, right? And then the body jumps up with a whole lot of symptoms because it's trying to let you know that, hey, we didn't sign up for this, right? So let's look at some of these mental health. So depression. Now, depression generally is a disconnection problem. It's a connection problem, right? And we're disconnected through to what we authentically are as a soul, right? Because, this is not everyone, but for the most part of what I've experienced with people with depression is that, people connect depression with loneliness, right? But the thing is, a lot of people that are going, yes, the world is a hard place out there because it's been created upon duality, and duality is mind creation, which again is not supporting us, right? And there's the hardships of general life. I get that. But when people are going through depression, they just feel lost. And that's where the whole saying of a lost soul comes from, right? Talking about depression as a connection problem. And because a lot of people feel that way, but there are a lot of people, they've got people around them, support network, people that love and care for them. But it's not about that. It's not about connection to those people. What it comes down to is a connection. Do you have a connection to yourself? Do you love yourself? That's what it comes down to. And when we're not using our natural state, right, to get the heart open, the soul leads us, right? The soul is guiding our way. And hence the mind is instead, is that all of us as humans believe that to be loved, to establish a great connection, is going to be with somebody or something outside of ourselves, which means we jump over the first step of connection, and that connection, and the most important connection of all, is a connection with yourself and a love for yourself. Okay, so that's just jumped over straight up, and then through the mind, through thought mentality, all of a sudden we're creating attachment, we're creating dependency, which is meaning that we've got these voids and we're using other things outside of us, other people, to fill that void, or you got wounds that you're using those things outside of you to patch up, when really you're not resolving it yourself, because it's not about them, it's about you. Right, so you can see how all of that comes into play with that. Now, when it comes to anxiety is again connected to mind thought mentality, because what we're going to also connect with anxiety is a panic attack as well, right? And we'll start off with a panic attack, because a panic attack, right, you hyperventilate, concern, worry, fears, or an aspect of that. Now, when we get our heart open, present our natural state, we are facilitating our soul consciousness, which is also an infinite consciousness, which means an energy that has no boundary or limitation, right? And so when we get our heart open, what happens with our field, our auric field? It expands out, right? And that will make us feel more connected to ourselves, have a greater sense of knowing and understanding of our environment as well, feel more at ease, feel more happy about ourselves, all the things that everyone's looking for, right? Just simply presenting your natural state, right? Now, as the human, our visible sight, right, we only see 0.0035% of reality, right, of the electromagnetic spectrum of light, which means we can't see the field, right? But our body is predetermined by the field. It's very much like if we look at a goldfish in a goldfish bowl, right? The goldfish is dependent on its environment, right? The quality of the water in the goldfish bowl, right? Same with us, right? Everyone emphasizes, I've got to work on the body, but really the body is predetermined by our field. It always starts with energy, right? And so when our heart closes up, right, by not using our heart, right? As I said, if we don't use it, we lose it. And we're up in mind, thought, mentality. Do you know what happens to our field? It collapses in. It closes in. It gets shrinks, right? That's when we start to feel uneasy, right? It's like walls caving in on you. So in regards to a panic attack, do you know what's happening to your field? These are real dramatic collapsing of your field. And if you could see the field, it'd be like you're in a room, right? And that field is four walls and they're caving in on you. No wonder you're panicking, right? Right? So isn't this, give you a greater sense and understanding of what's really going down with a panic attack? You might not connect to it because you're based on, I can't see that. But do you know what? You feel it. And that's why I mentioned that the body is a form of discernment. Right? We can't, feel is not limited. What we see is limited, as I just mentioned before. Our thought process is limited because it gave us the original belief structure that seeing is believing, which is obviously flawed. But feel is connected to everything. We need to embrace that. And what's the domain of feel? The heart, right? Your natural state. Your natural state and what you authentically are comes from. So you feel the field. You can't see it, right? The mind and thought can't grasp that. It doesn't want you to grasp that, but you can feel it through the body, and the body's presenting that to you. Thank you, body. That's what we should really be saying. Now, so it collapses in. That's why they feel that way in regards to a panic attack. Of course, when somebody's anxious as well, the field is very collapsed in. And of course, what we're going to do is we need to get you back in your natural state, get your heart open, get that field expansive again, right? So you can see how just, as my soul consciousness always tells me, our only role here is to present our natural state, which a lot of people now, when I'm working with them, they might say, wow, this is actually quite hard, because it really is simple. At its core, it's just now hard because we've got so used to the complexity of using mind, thought, mentality, not just for this lifetime, but for a lot of us, hundreds of thousands of lifetimes, right? This is why we haven't ascended. Now, ADHD, right? Well, that's pretty self-explanatory because A is to do with attention, our focus, right? And, when we present our natural state, right, we get ourselves as the soul consciousness here, which what we authentically are. That's why we feel more at ease, because that's what we are. Not our conditioning, not the world told us to become, but what we authentically are and what we infinitely are. Now, while we're here, right, we're here to expand ourselves as a consciousness, and how we do that, right, at the top of the list is where we place our attention, our focus. It's that important, right? So in a session with me at Truly Holistic, the most common things we do, get you into your natural state, right? Get your heart open, and also really we work on your attention. It's the most common area we work on all sorts of health problems, because where you place where attention goes, energy flows, right? Which that expression, which has been around for a very long time, implies that what we choose to focus on, we invest our energy in it. We feed our energy into creating more of that. Okay? So if somebody's watching the news all the time or following the world events, right, that they're not leading themselves, their heart's not leading their experience. They're being led by all these external variables in place, informants, then they're being played to invest their energy into, a lot of the times, the things they don't even want to see in the world. Right? And this is step one in the game of duality, which we could say being locked in this matrix, a limited world. where you won't ascend, and also you'll experience all these health problems that generate because we're not presenting our natural state. So ADHD is very much, about, again, we've got a more over-stimulating environment than we've ever had, right? And again, that's playing on people's attention. You think about that you're splashing energy all over the place, right? When you can't hold your attention on a specific thing. And also it's the question of where that energy is being invested in as well, because that might be invested into the very blocks, obstructions that you're now experiencing. And of course, if you don't have this knowing, then you're thinking, well, I'm a SHIT magnet, right? Bad luck's happening to me all the time, and then that can create victimhood and all these sorts of things that come about it. When really, at the core, it's just a loss of self-awareness, which means you've lost sight of where your energy is being invested, right? So, which now is not supporting you, it's working against you, right? So this is what we look at that and how we will address those sorts of things. Now, schizophrenia and psychosis, this is, talking about hallucinations and voices in your head and those sorts of things. And now, it's not necessarily, they're not in your head, right? This is how you perceive it, right? Again, because this is how we get taught to perceive it. This is where we've got to go a little bit deeper into what the mind is, what the mind represents, right? The only two things that the heart and the mind have in common is they are access points, right? Like portals, presenting a consciousness intelligence here to utilize an interface, a body, to extend its will on reality, right? To forge reality, to extend its creation. Every intelligence, consciousness, all it wants to do is evolve. And we'll talk a little bit about that wanting to evolve in regards to microbes and infections, maybe in another video. But so the heart, what the heart represents is the quantum. And quantum means everything. This is why when I say, when you get your natural state, right, state of being, which presents the heart, and don't see a state of being like you're just sitting there meditating all day. You can be very productive. You're going to be more productive, actually, because you're just going to go with the flow. Things will come effortlessly to you, and you're still productive through presenting a state of being. So when you present a state of being, you open up the heart, right, and you as a soul consciousness comes forth, and where that comes forth from is the quantum. Quantum means everything. And you're an infinite consciousness, which is everything, right? So when I say, when you get your heart open, you present everything you are, but also everything the body needs, because that infinite consciousness is spectrums of frequencies and every potential of every frequency, which are the building blocks to every mineral, every vitamin, everything that we believe we need sustenance from outside of us is all facilitated from you. This is how powerful you can be. Now, when we go to the mind represents the void, and void means nothingness. Okay, so every intelligence that comes from the void is parasitic in nature. Why? Because it wants to evolve, but it doesn't have the means, the energy to do it. So it needs to deceive and manipulate something that does have a lot of energy, you at your core, in the way that you then use your energy here. Right? And of course, we just talked about it, it's going to manipulate how you place your attention and what you focus on. Right? And what do we see in the world now when you go online? There are algorithms in place that you watch a video, they're trying the little side ads, they're trying to draw you to another video so they can keep your focus or attention on an agenda, on a means that where they want you to go. Right? Okay. So and again, algorithms for me are more based on probability than possibility, and possibility is more expansive. Probability is more this limitation of mind, thought, mentality, and how that's very connected to AI, because which is not your natural intelligence, your artificial intelligence, right? So you can see how it all connects up. Now, so when somebody's got schizophrenia, they are very mind oriented. The void has taken them over big time, right? So that person now become a representation of the void. Quite often when people have really problematic psychotic episodes, right, or schizophrenia, people that know them really well, might be a brother, might be a mother, they'll go, I see my son, I see my brother, but that's not him, right? Because on the outside it's his body, but what's steering his ship? Is it his soul? No, it's another consciousness intelligence, which often many people would say is an entity, a dark force, a dark entity now taken over, right? It's possessing them, right? And that's what's happening. We typically at Tree Holistic don't like to say the word entity anymore, because all of a sudden that just means we're vilifying it, and that just feeds into it. We just need to see it for what it is. And what it is just not that person's soul, right? So we want to facilitate their soul, and we want to make sure that then the void and these intelligence that come from the void don't infiltrate this person and possess them, right? So that's how we go about that. And again, it's a byproduct of not presenting our actual state. Okay. So and then what we've found with also schizophrenia, right, when they're seeing hallucinations, that is actually the original projection of that hallucination. It's not outside of them, it's from within them projecting it out, right? Because I've dealt with a lot of people with these types of issues, and they'll say, when I look in the mirror and I look at my eyes, I don't see myself back, right? And as I said, right, where attention goes, energy flows, right? So we project our energy into reality like we're the painter, and our reality is that canvas, right? Even quantum physics, right, which really is the science of the future, states that for reality to be here, it requires an observer. And of course, what's an observer using? Their place of attention, their focus, they're using their eyes. Because we're projecting reality. So what's happening through the vessel, right, through the interface, this intelligence that's got a hold of this individual, which no longer is the soul, right, because the soul has to get through the heart, and the heart's closed off for this person. They're projecting what they want that person to see and then react to, and they react in a fearful way, which then creates an energy that supports that particular entity, right? Because what supports you, what sustains you is love, it's not fear, right? And then it creates a vicious cycle, right? It gets them trapped within that. So that's what that's all about, right? And that's how we can help them. Now, let's lastly talk about cancer. You can see the time's already up to 27 minutes. Cancer's sometimes, I think heart disease is still number one, but number two killer is cancer, right? And again, it's been a problem for a long time. We've had years and decades to remedy it, and we're not really getting anywhere with the conventional treatment methods, which generally are surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation, right? People say that's cut, burn, and poison, right? Because generally the side effects of chemotherapy, if you look at the adverse effects of when someone gets poisoned, it's exactly the same, right? And this is why they do a very short period of treatment, because if you keep going, the treatment itself would kill the person, right? It's quite barbaric, really. Right, and all the technologies, like we've got this, like I'm doing a video on my phone, like this little computer in my pocket that can do so many things, right? If we can do that with that technology, why are we still in this why are we still using these things as treatment methods for cancer? And of course, there's going to be people out there yelling out, oh, it's for money, it's for greed, and those sorts of things. Yeah, I get where you're coming from. Now, okay, so what's going on with cancer? Again, right, when we get our heart open, we present our natural state of being, our heart's got an ability to transmute and shift things back into balance, right? So when it comes to cancer, it's very connected to our microbial process, our microbes in the body. Not about things coming into the body, about our microbes we already have in and on our body, okay? And bacteria, mold, bacteria, mold, fungus, yeasts, all are sustained by the same state that we are sustained from, right? What we would call love, right? When we get our natural state of being, right? And open the heart up. Because our body's a host to them, right? So when we present a state that works for that body part, let's just take the digestive system, right? It's an example. Then it's also presenting a state that supports the evolution, the growth, the evolvement of the microbe that resides there or lives there, right? And what happens there is a synergistic, symbiotic relationship going on where everything's balanced, right? Because when we look at, for example, duality, two opposites, two polarities, right? And when we talk about a balanced state neutrality, it's about bringing those two opposite factions and bringing them together, right? And we know that as the geometry of conception, which are two circles that overlap each other, and then they create the vesica Pisces, right? That oval shape in that area where those two circles overlap, right? Why we call it conception geometry, because that's how the body's formed, right? A male and a woman, a male and a female, two polarities come together to have a baby, right? To create a new body. And of course, that same state is presented when the heart's formed, the first organ, the form in an embryo, for your soul to get here, because that's the portal for you as a soul to then have that vessel body for a lifetime, right? To have this experience. So you've got the microbes and you've got the body part, right? The anatomy, and they come together and they work together, right? A symbiotic, synergistic relationship. When that's going, everything's well, everything's vital, right? Everything's good. But when you don't present your natural state, your upper mind thought mentality, which is to not have those polarities together, but to pull them all apart and go in opposite directions. That's the game of duality. You've got to have two players, create conflict somehow, right? Then all of a sudden, those two factions no longer work together. They work against each other. And that's the whole idea of a pathogenic microbe. Pathogenic meaning working against the body, right? So pathogenic microbe's not a specific strain. Pathogenic microbe and beneficial microbe are the same. It depends on the state or environment it's given, whether it will be pathogenic, right, when those polarities come apart, or beneficial when it comes together, which is based on whether you're presenting your natural state or not. Now, over a period of time, when you don't present your natural state, right, and they go the opposite ways, we call this an imbalanced microbial process called fermentation. And fermentation is a term well known, right, in regards to a microbial process. They use it like to create beer and wine and all these sorts of things, right, which is to do with microbes feeding it a medium, so therefore it can convert an alcohol and all the acids and all these sorts of things that come about it. Now, so in that fermentation process, it's essentially creating a soil that supports the germination of what we know as cancer, okay? What it also provides is, imbalanced pH levels, right? So areas become more acidic or they lose their balance. Also, there's an imbalance between oxygen and carbon dioxide. So, in the beer community, right? When they're making beer or wine, or maybe not so much for wine, but beer, after a while, part of that fermentation process is it builds carbonation, right? That's carbon dioxide. Right? So when people have digestive trouble and they're like, oh, I feel real bloated, what's that? Well, you've got a brewery happening and you've got carbonation happening in your digestive system, which is a byproduct of this imbalanced microbial process called fermentation, right? So we want, you want oxygen, carbon dioxide balance in check, and you want the pH to be in check as well. Of course, other things that come about from this fermentation process is inflammation, calcification, all the things you don't want. Infection, or what they call an infection, which really is not medicine, because they have a lack of knowing. Oh, it's a bad microbe, or we're just going to kill it. It's essentially like saying to a human, you did one bad thing and they go, oh, you're a bad person, you'll be a bad person for the rest of your life, without knowing any of your circumstance or situation, right? It's so dumb, right? It's like if a person does a bad thing, you go to counseling, or someone, an expert asks you, understand you did this bad thing, but what's your home like? What's your family like? Do you have a close connection to family? What's work like? Is it a good workplace? You get an understanding of your kind of sustained environment or state, right? We're talking about state here. So it's the same thing with the microbes. It truly helps that we have a greater knowing of that whole process. Now, so cancer can come out of that process, right, as I say. And this is why, there's been so many scholars over the time that will say, hey, cancer's a parasite, cancer's because of acidity, cancer's because of lack of oxygen, right? Which are all part of this one process we call fermentation, right? And now, like everything that we perceive in the physical, cancer is an energy at its core, right? And as I said, right, when we are utilizing mind, thought, mentality, we become a representation of what the mind is, which is the void, right? And as I said, the void, everything that comes from the void is parasitic in nature. Well, cancer is parasitic in nature, right? It utilizes and feeds on the body for its own sustenance, not you, right? So again, cancer is a byproduct, again, not using our natural state, not facilitating what we are from the heart, and hence not embodying what we're not from the mind. This is why we use it. This is why we use this way of practice or way of healing. It truly holistic, because it's connected to everything. It gives us the answers to everything. Okay, and that's why I can clearly say that truly holistic, we know what causes all the problems and we know how to go about it. And I hope these videos demonstrate and so showcase that, right? So therefore, that initial intelligence, consciousness cancer will permeate through the layers, right? And you'll see at the cellular level, right? Because again, the cellular level is a reflection of what's happening in the energetic level, which we talked about in part 1, right, in regards to blood and the heart and cardiovascular disease and so on. And it permeates through the layers, and then eventually you'll see a tumor and all these sorts of things, right? So, so one thing we do also see about cancer, like, when people do treatment options, they go into remission, and then a few years' time, all of a sudden they get cancer back. And this happens a lot, right? I'm sure you've experienced a lot. I've experienced a lot, whether I was working in the hospital setting or just people around me. They'll go, wow, I can't believe it. I'm shocked that's come back. Well, God, it happens most of the time, right? But if it comes in a different area of the body, or the practitioner, right, the doctor will say, oh, this is a different cancer. No, it's not. It's the same. Cancer's cancer, okay? And what happens there is that, we might have kind of got it to, step back a bit and come back from a tumor or cellular level. But the intelligence of cancer hides out the nervous system. We find a lot of stuff like that hiding in the nervous system. And it's cunning because it waits for you to slip up again and create a state where you're not presenting your natural state, and all of a sudden cancer's like, oh, time for us to evolve again. And you see it, and it comes back with a vengeance, right? Taking out a lot of people. So anyway, this is part 2. We'll end it there because this has gone for a while. And part 3, we're going to move on in regards to looking at the digestive system, looking at the spinal system in regards to arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, and the whole infection, allergies, things with microbes. So that's going to be really exciting. So please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already, and I look forward to the next one. Now, also, if you want to book an appointment with me, right, for healing or reality coaching or learn more of this, just go to my website. I've got an appointment page, trulyholistic.net/appointments/ where you can book your own appointment wherever you are in the world. We all do it distantly or locally. Any way we can do it, I'm available for you. So catch you next time. Bye.